All right, hello, welcome back. Today we're going to look at the land cards of the Scrappy Survivors Dogmeat Fallout Precon deck. Shouldn't take us very long. There's only a couple of instances, a couple of cards to go over here. Hopefully we'll be able to fire right through it, but let's go ahead and just get to the point. All right, first obvious easy lands to go through. We're going to go through the basic lands, just like all the other Fallout precons. All of the basic lands are full art, and each one has a unique, different artwork to it. And for this particular deck, there are 4 of each: 4 forests, 4 mountains, and 4 plains. So we can get those out of the way. We also have the lands that enter the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. We don't have all 3 of these. We only have the Celestia and Gruul versions of this card. So there's those. Love those lands. Now we have the cycling lands. So we got Ash Barrens, Sheltered Thicket, and Scattered Groves. Again, we only have the Celestia and Gruul of the colored versions. These two have cycling 2, which means you can pay 2 and discard a card to draw a card. But the Ash Barrens has basic land cycling 1, so you can pay 1 and discard it to search your library for a basic land and put it into your hand. So that's slightly different than these other ones. But again, Gruul and Celestia colors on those. We have the 3 temples: Plenty, Abandon, and Triumph. They enter the battlefield tapped, and when they do enter the battlefield, you can scry 1. So we got all 3 of the combinations of those. Always enjoy having those in the decks most of the time. Very good for having your color balance, especially in your 3 colors here. Then we have the basic land slow lands, which is red. We have the Boros, Gruul, and Celestia options here again. And these enter the battlefield tapped unless you control a basic land of either of the colors that they tap for. So if you have a forest, then these 2 would enter tapped. If you have a mountain, then these 2 would enter tapped, and so on and so forth. So those are always good to have because there's a pretty good chance that you'll have those basic lands on the battlefield at some point. So then the next one that we have is our balance lands, as I like to call them. I forget what their technical term is, but these allow you to pay 1 colorless to tap and get out 2 of the various color combinations: Boros, Celestia, again, and Gruul. We got all 3 of those represented here. These are really good, kind of simple input, output. Helps with color balancing. Always like including those, especially, again, in the tricolor decks. Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. Those 2 are lands that tap, sacrifice, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So these, again, you can use these to dive for if you need a mountain or you need a red mana. You can just be like, oh, hey, boom, there we go. Now I have my colors and I'm good, So always like having these also in a tricolor deck. All right, now we get into the more exotic single lands here. We have Junktown, which is taps for a colorless and has the additional ability of pay red and 4 to tap and sacrifice it. You may create 3 junk tokens. Honestly, the tapping for the colorless is a little bit more valuable to me. Sacrificing my lands, especially only for 3 junk tokens, I feel like it would be a waste of land ramp here. But that, again, just my personal preferences here. Exotic Orchard taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So that would be if your opponent has red, white, or green, you can tap it for those colors. Otherwise, you'll get back colorless from it. So that's better in a 3-color deck. You'll be more likely to be able to get an actual color that you can use from it. In a dual or a single color deck, I might recommend not putting Exotic Orchard in there. But dealer's choice on that one. It's definitely a good land that is worthwhile having in many cases. We have Scavenger Grounds, which is a desert. It has tap for colorless or pay 2, tap and sacrifice it to exile all graveyards. So that can be really powerful if you're playing against a graveyard or a mill deck like the Mothman or maybe a Marin deck. You can basically just stop them right in their tracks and make them start over just by hitting that, and they won't be able to feed off of the graveyards like they had been. So that good utility, doesn't really synergize with this particular deck, but also taps for colorless and offers that protection. So I definitely understand and appreciate having it in there. We have Buried Ruin, which also taps for colorless, and it has pay 2 and tap and sacrifice it. Return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. This absolutely synergizes with this deck because we got the graveyard artifact return, pay 2, sacrifice the land, taps for colorless if you don't you don't want to use that other feature there. So definitely like having this card in there. Also have a Roadside Reliquary. Again, taps for a colorless and has a pay 2 tap and sacrifice ability. Except for this one is draw a card if you control an artifact, and draw a card if you control an enchantment. So you can pay 2, tap, and sacrifice this to probably, in this deck at least, draw 2 cards. So that can be very useful if used properly. Rogue's Passage is a tap for colorless, pay 4, and tap. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. When you're running a 1 creature that you're building, which I think I incorrectly called Voltron, I believe that's actually Zerg is the right word for that. In a previous video, I think I called it Voltron, but I meant to say Zerg, I think. Anyway, 4-cost tap. Give that creature unblockable. Can be very helpful. Keep in mind if that creature has Shroud, this ability will not work. But I love having this in here for this particular deck. Path of Ancestry. Now, I have trouble with having this one in this deck. This doesn't make any sense because it enters the battlefield tapped, and sure, it taps to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. But when that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander's Scry 1, that ability is completely worthless because there are no other cards in this deck that are of creature type dog. And so since we're using Dogmeat as our commander, this does us really a whole lot of absolutely nothing. Other than tapping for 1 of each of our colors, which we can do so much more efficiently with other lands. So I question having a Path of Ancestry in a non-tribal deck, but that is, again, just me. You might be like, oh, but this, that, and the other thing, and that could be perfectly valid. I think it's, again, situational. But like, there are no other dogs in this deck, so you're never going to trigger that ability unless you swatch it out and you start using Preston as the commander. But I don't know. We also have Jungle Shrine, which is exactly like Path of Ancestry, except for minus the scrying ability. It enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for 1 of all 3, or 1 of any of our colors. Love having that one in there. Jungle Temple, we just did Jungle Temple. This is Temple of the False God, which is tap, add 2 colorless, which I love. That's really good, except for activate only if you control 5 or more lands. Now, in a commander, probably going to you can cast 5 costs. That's probably going to be the case, having 5 lands. But if this is a land that you start with in your opening hand, you're probably gonna want a mulligan because it's not gonna do you any good until you draw into a bunch more of your land ramp. So personally, I would pull this one out too, but again, that's just me. I would put in something that is a little bit faster and more usable for the early game. just in case so that I can rely on that early game mana base. And the last land is, of course, Command Tower. Every single command deck should have a Command Tower that enters untapped and taps for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. So this deck overall, I thought it was fun to play. I feel like it was constructed in a way that could have been perhaps a little bit more focused and a little better. A little bit too much emphasis on um, the utility ability or the utilitarian ability of the deck, doing things that are tangentially related to what the deck is trying to accomplish here. But I did fairly well with it when I was playing it. It definitely was fun to play. However, going forward, I think I'm just going to scrap it. There are pieces of this deck that I want to include in my Ishin deck, and other pieces of it that I want to eventually include in some other decks that I have planned for the future. So I'm going to go ahead and dismantle this deck and sort it back into my collection. And next time, in the next video, we will go into Ishin. I will cover that in a series of 4. And then following that, we'll go into wrap up our Fallout Precon series with the Science deck. And then I've got a couple other Precons that I want to go over. But anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I will catch you guys in the next video with Ishin.